Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today let's discuss the summary of all the books written by Geoffrey Chaucer. The first one, the Book of the Duchess, Chaucer's earliest major poetic work. The Book of the Duchess was likely written around 1368 or 1369 to commemorate the death of Blanche of Lancaster, wife of John of Gaunt, Chaucer's patron. The poem opens with a narrator suffering from prolonged insomnia who reads an old book of classical tales and falls asleep, entering a vivid dream vision. In the dream, he encounters a mysterious knight dressed in black who is mourning the loss of his beloved lady. The dialogue unfolds gradually, revealing the knight's profound grief and metaphorically mirroring the stages of mourning and emotional trauma. Allegorical figures such as fortune and the dream setting itself enrich the narrative with a philosophical depth. The poem showcases Chaucer's early experimentation with the dream vision form, blending emotional sincerity with the allegory and offering an elegy that is both personal and universal in tone. The next work, that is The House of Fame, is composed around 1379 or 1380. The House of Fame is another dream vision poem that explores the uncertain nature of reputation and literary fame. The narrator, Geoffrey, dreams of being carried by a talking eagle to the celestial House of Fame, where he observes how stories and reputations are shaped often inaccurately by hearsay and a transmission. The poem satirizes poets, historians, and the public's fickleness, revealing Chaucer's growing skepticism about authorship and literary authority. Its structure is fragmented, shifting between philosophical musings, mythological references, and a dream-like imagery. Though the poem remains unfinished, it offers one of the earliest meta-literary commentaries in English literature. The surreal narrative and unresolved ending contribute to its mystique, suggesting Chaucer's awareness of literature's limitation and his own place in literary tradition. The next work is Annelida and Azite. Likely composed in the late 1370s, Annelida and Azite is a relatively short but stylistically complex poem combining elements of epic invocation, courtly love, and a complaint literature. The narrative recounts the tragic story of Queen Annelida of Armenia, who falls in love with the Azite of Thebes, only to be betrayed. The opening features a formal invocation reminiscent of classical epics, while the later part includes Annelida's emotional lament, one of Chaucer's early forays into a female-voiced dramatic monologue. The poem is notable for its hybrid structure, combining influences from French and Italian traditions, particularly the works of Boccaccio and Machado. Its abrupt and unfinished ending has led scholars to debate whether Chaucer abandoned it or intended it to be a fragment. Nonetheless, it is a rich example of his experimentation with a poetic form and a gendered perspectives. The next work, The Parliament of Fowls, written around 1382, The Parliament of Fowls is a humorous and allegorical dream vision that centers on a parliament of birds gathered on St. Valentine's Day to choose their mates. The poem begins with the narrator reading Cicero's work Dream of Scipio, which leads him into a dream where he witnesses the bird parliament presided over by nature herself. At its heart is a love debate involving three male eagles vying for the hand of a noble female eagle who ultimately delays her decision. The poem humorously critiques the conventions of godly love and a social hierarchy with different bird species representing various human classes. Through this allegory, Chaucer examines the tension between rational choice and emotional desire in romantic matters. The poem is also significant for its early association of Valentine's Day with love, a tradition that persists to this day. The next work is Troilus and Cressida. Troilus and Cressida, composed in the mid-1380s, is Chaucer's longest completed narrative poem and one of his greatest literary achievements. Based on Boccaccio's Il Filostrato, the poem recounts the tragic love story of Troilus, a Trojan prince, and Cressida, the daughter of a Trojan priest who defects to the Greeks. Chaucer transforms the tale into a complex psychological drama, delving into themes of love, fate, betrayal, and human vulnerability. The narrative is framed by fortune's wheel and fate's inexorable power, with a Troilus rising in love only to fall through Cressida's abandonment. The poem, written in elegant rhyme-royal stanzas, blends classical mythology with a courtly tradition and a subtle irony. It has been praised for its emotional depth, narrative structure, and a philosophical richness, influencing later tragic romances and marking a milestone in medieval literature. The next work is The Legend of Good Women. Likely written in the mid-1380s, The Legend of Good Women is a didactic poem that begins with a prologue in which the narrator, who is a version of Chaucer himself, is chastised by the god of love and the queen Alceste for having portrayed women unfaithfully in early works. As atonement, he is commanded to write stories of women who remained loyal and virtuous in love, even unto death. Each subsequent legend, for example Cleopatra, Thisbe, Dido, presents a tale of female constancy and a male betrayal, elevating the theme of feminine virtue. However, only a few legends were completed and the poem remains unfinished, with both a prologue A and a prologue B existing in a manuscript form. The work reflects Chaucer's engagement with the themes of gender, morality, and a literary authority, possibly responding to contemporary debates about women in literature. Despite its fragmentary nature, the poem is significant for its ideological reversal and a narrative experimentation. The next work, The Canterbury Tales, Chaucer's magnum opus. The Canterbury Tales began in the late 1380s and left unfinished at his death, is a monumental frame narrative comprising a diverse collection of stories told by pilgrims on the way to the shrine of Thomas Becket in Canterbury. Each tale is matched to its teller, a knight, a wife of Bath, a partner, and so on, reflecting the personality, social class, and a worldview. The tales range from bawdy fablics and chivalric romances to moral allegories and saints' legends, offering a panoramic view of 14th century English society. Themes include corruption in the church, gender roles, the complexity of love, and a human hypocrisy, all woven through the rich tapestry of humor, irony, and pathos. The general prologue introduces the pilgrims in vivid detail, establishing the framework for the storytelling contest proposed by the host. Despite being incomplete, the Canterbury Tales is considered a cornerstone of English literature, lauded for its linguistic innovation, narrative dynamism, and a psychological insight. The next work is A Treatise on the Astrolabe, written around 1391. A Treatise on the Astrolabe is a remarkable prose work in which Chaucer offers a technical manual on the use of the astrolabe. That is a sophisticated medieval instrument used for observing and calculating the positions of celestial bodies. Addressed to his 10-year-old son, Louis, the treatise exemplifies Chaucer's dedication to pedagogy and intellectual curiosity outside of his poetic endeavors. The work is divided into 5 parts, though only the first 2 and a part of the third one were completed. These sections include detailed definitions, diagrams, and step-by-step instructions on using the astrolabe for astronomical and astrological calculations, such as finding the time of a day or determining the altitude of a star. The treatise is one of the first scientific works written in English rather than Latin, making complex knowledge accessible to a wider lay audience. It highlights Chaucer's engagement with contemporary science and serves as an important artifact of medieval scholasticism, revealing the interconnectedness of literature, science, and education in his time. The next work, that is, The Roman of the Rose. The Roman of the Rose is an English translation of the influential 13th century French allegorical poem Le Roman de la Rose, originally authored by Guillaume de Laurice and later extended by Jean de Meun. Chaucer's translation is believed to cover approximately the first 1,700 lines, corresponding to Guillaume's more romantic and idealistic portion of the original. The poem allegorizes the lover's journey toward attaining the rose, symbolizing his beloved, by navigating a garden filled with personified figures such as love, beauty, reason, and jealousy. Chaucer's translation not only captures the intricate symbolism and courtly love themes of the original, but also adapts the French poetic sensibility into the rhythms and structures of Middle English. Though scholarly debate continues regarding which sections are Chaucer's, the work remains a crucial link between French literary traditions and English poetic development. It also sheds light on Chaucer's early stylistic formation and his ability to domesticate a complex allegory for English audiences, helping lay the groundwork for the flourishing of English narrative poetry. The next work is Boys. Boys is Chaucer's English translation of The Consolation of Philosophy by the Roman philosopher Boethius, a profoundly influential philosophical text written during Boethius' imprisonment in the early 6th century. Composed in a mixture of prose and verse, Boethius' original work discusses the transience of fortune, the nature of happiness, divine providence, and the illusion of material goods. Chaucer's translation, likely undertaken in the late 1370s, brings these deep philosophical meditations into the vernacular, making them accessible to an English-speaking readership and contributing to the intellectual life of late medieval England. His rendering is not merely a word-for-word translation, but an interpretative effort that seeks to clarify complex concepts, sometimes drawing on commentaries or paraphrasing for greater clarity. Boyce significantly influenced Chaucer's worldview and thematic concerns, particularly evident in Troilus and Cressida and The Knight's Tale, where the roles of fate, fortune, and a philosophical resignation are central. The work represents Chaucer's erudition and his role as a mediator of classical thought in a changing literary landscape. The next work, The Complaint of Mars. This courtly love poem, written in rhyme-royal stanzas, personifies the planet Mars as a lamenting lover soaring over his forced separation from Venus. Drawing from astrological and mythological lore, the poem intertwines celestial mechanics with the emotional states, symbolizing the estrangement caused by planetary motion or divine command. Mars' lament reveals both the intensity and helplessness of love, blending cosmic allegory with the emotional stylings of medieval courtly literature. The poem's structure and tone echo the conventions of the complaint genre, while also demonstrating Chaucer's interest in the scientific worldview of his time. He plays with the metaphor of planetary conjunction and opposition to symbolize rational harmony and conflict. Likely written to honor a noble patron or as part of a poetic exchange, The Complaint of Mars showcases Chaucer's fusion of astronomy, mythology, and a poetic craft, contributing to the literary dialogue between science and emotion in a late medieval England. The next work is The Complaint unto Pity. The Complaint unto Pity, a deeply personal and lyrical poem, the speaker appeals to the personified figure of Pity, lamenting her disappearance from the heart of his beloved. The poem unfolds as a stylized lover's petition, in which the absence of pity becomes both a symbolic and a literary cause of speaker's suffering. Written in 7-line stanzas that is rhyme royal, the poem exhibits Chaucer's command of emotional nuance and a rhetorical structure, using classical and allegorical imagery to express the torment of unrequited love. The speaker's heart is imagining as a place once inhabited by Pity, now barren due to her banishment. This allegorical layering draws on French courtly traditions, particularly the influence of Guillaume de Maut, but Chaucer adopts them with an individual emotional depth. The poem reflects the medieval realization of emotional suffering as noble and redemptive, and it contributes to Chaucer's exploration of inner emotional landscapes and the performative nature of love discourse. The next work, that is, The Complaint of Venus. This elegant lyric presents a female speaker, potentially the goddess Venus herself, expressing anguish over her lover's betrayal and emotional inconsistency. The poem is a translation or adaptation from a French original poem, possibly by Otten de Grandson, but Chaucer brings to it a unique voice that accompanies poignancy and a poetic grace. Structured as a triple ballad, each stanza elaborates on the psychological pain of loving someone who has changed or withdrawn. The speaker's suffering is intensified by the contrast between her past joy and her current desolation. Chaucer's choice to ventriloquize a female speaker demonstrates a sensitivity to different gendered experiences of love and betrayal. The poem also illustrates his stylistic versatility as he adapts to refined formalism of French lyric poetry while infusing it with emotional realism. The complaint of Venus contributes to the tradition of female-authored or female-voiced complaints in medieval literature and adds to Chaucer's broader thematic concerns with the constancy of love. The next work, that is, The Complaint to His Purse. The Complaint to His Purse is a witty and ironic poem in which Chaucer addresses his empty purse as if it were a faithless lady in a conventional courtly love poem. Employing the stylized rhetoric of a romantic complaint, the poem humorously laments the poet's financial destitution and subtly appeals to King Henry IV for financial support or a pension. The final stanza is a direct supplication to the king, cleverly masked as an extension of the purse metaphor. Chaucer's blunting of economic anxiety with a literary wit exemplifies his mastery of tone and satire. It also provides valuable insight into the realities of a poet's life in the late Middle Ages, where literary production was often tied to royal patronage. This poem stands out as one of the earliest instances in English literature where a financial dependency is poetically rented with such a levity and ingenuity. It underscores Chaucer's skill in manipulating poetic form to address both the personal and political realities.